Hey guys, welcome back to the second part of the tutorial in which we will be making the automatic Corona updates program. And in the last video we had successfully created this sample program which gives us the updates about coronavirus in the US. And in the previous tutorial we had covered the web scraping part using requests and beautiful soup, and in this tutorial we will be covering the graphical user interface or the GUI part. So yeah, let's get started. So if you are here without watching the first part 1 of the tutorial, then I highly recommend that you go and watch that first and then watch this one. Otherwise a lot of things might not make sense. But now that's out of the way, let's get back to making this. So first I'll open it up, and actually it's already open as you can see. Just a second. Alright, so let's just make sure once again that this works, right? And remember, I run this using the terminal. So I'll cd into the directory which was named, I forgot what was it named. Why did I name it such a big name? I should have chose a shorter name because it's too hard to remember, as you can see, and it also gives me a couple of errors. Oh, actually I had to cd into the desktop first, forgot about that. Alright, so now we should be able to run it without any problems. Just make sure you name yours something much more simpler than this to avoid any sort of trouble. So now the way we run it is Python 3, and the name of the application, again I have named it something way too complex, so oops, that was the other program that was open. So this is test.py, so we can just run test.py and check if it works. If it does, it should successfully show us the total number of confirmed cases and recovered cases and the death cases. So let's just see if that works. A little check before we begin, and there we go, that's right. And we can just cross check by going to the website, but we're not going to do that. So now going into the GUI part. So for this we will need the library or module, whatever you want to call it, package called Tinctor. That is spelled with a T, Tinctor, right? Sorry, spelled with a K silent. Alright, so how do we check if we have it? So it's not a pip package, you can't install it with pip, I believe, but you should be able to install it with your default package manager. In my Linux system it's apt or aptitude or tpkg. So last time I was on Manjaro and I'm back to Ubuntu now. So on Manjaro it was Pacman. So if you're on Manjaro or Arch Linux, this should work. Pacman S Python 3 TK, this should work for you. And if you're on Debian or Ubuntu, you should type in sudo apt install Python 3 TK. But I'll suggest that if you're on any other distros or even on Debian or Arch, just cross verify it by going on the internet. And if you're on Windows and Mac, just check out how you can install Tinctor for your respective device. So respective OS, I guess. Alright, anyways, let's get back. So I have already installed it, and the way I can check is dpkg s python 3 tk, and there we go, that shows me. Oops, I can't even spell clear. There we go. Alright, so now since I have that, I can use it, and the way we're going to use it is how was it? I kind of forgot. Okay. So it's import Tinctor, I guess. Alright, I have to check. I really forgot. So let me go to my original application that I had created, and yeah, from Tinctor you need to import everything. So that's done by from Tinctor import star means everything, I guess. I'm not really sure. Doesn't matter anyways. So the way that you do this is you need to first call on a tinctor window, and you can name this pretty much anything that you want. Usually it's root, window, self, I don't know. I just named it as root, and it's equal to capital T, K, and 2 brackets, and it needs to be capital T, K for it to work. So that defines our main window, and not really a window but a widget, because everything in tinctor is a widget. So this what you see here is kind of like a widget if it were made with tinctor, but it's not. So you get the idea. This graphical thing of this node editor or this terminal that you see over here is a widget, a big widget, which has child widgets inside of it. And basically what this is a loop, a huge loop, right? So it's constantly listening to whether you're clicking, whether you're typing something. So it's kind of a active, alive loop, you can call it. So we need to place that in there, that main loop, and that's done with root.main loop. That's it. And you can just add it here, up here as well. But the problem is it will still run, because all of this code right here is not related to tinctor at all. But because what we are using inside tinctor will use this code, the thing in Python is that you can't use it before it's defined. So if I use something, let's say I use link, right? I use the link variable inside this tinctor code, then it will give me an error because it says that it's called before it's defined. So the other way around, for example, if I define my tinctor code down here, then I can do that. So I can separate it if I want to, but the definition comes before the implication or the application. Not the application, I don't know what to call it, but you get the idea, right? Before you call or use a variable, it needs to be defined first. So yeah, but what I'm doing here is putting everything inside the main tinctor loop itself. So that's just my way of doing it, and I think it would be much more easier to do it without any errors or anything. You can do it in whichever way you like. So now that that is defined, so if you run this code again, you should see a tiny window that pops up. Just a second. All right, it should be somewhere around here. The reason why it's taking so long is because it's evaluating all this request and beautiful soup part, and it actually stopped. I think maybe that's because we don't have anything inside our tinctor window, so maybe that is why it crashed. I'm not really sure, but anyway, so now we have that. So basically the way that we want it to look is, okay, wait a second, I don't have my default application ready to show you a demo, but how can I illustrate it? I have no idea how to illustrate you guys how. Well, let's say that you need a kind of a basic idea to you know, how can I, okay, so basically you need a picture inside your mind of how you want the final product to look like, and we can work from there. So for example, assume that this terminal, this console that I have here is the application itself, and think of all these, ignore all this text and think of it as a plain window, right? So how would I want my application to look? And for that, basically there are two ways in tinctor that you can display widgets, right? And the widget can be a text widget, an image, a button, anything that you want. So one way that it does is it packs. That's two ways to display it: pack and a grid system. Grid system consists of columns and rows, so you can specifically determine where a specific button needs to be displayed, right? Maybe, so if I say something like You can think of this notepad or this text editor as kind of a grid system, right? So we have row 1 here, in which file is in column 1, edit is in column 2, so on and so forth. But the way that pack works, it just puts everything, and it only takes up as much space as it is required, if that makes sense. And if you have worked on Android before, you will get this idea very easily, because this is there, and this is called something in Java as wrap content. Basically, it just allows it that much space as much as it needs. And I think that this is how the Tinctor's pack works, not really sure. So now we will be using the grid system, and it's quite easy. You can just try pack, so I can just show you a quick demo of how it will look like. And the way that you display text is by using the label. So I'll start off by a variable. I'll call it, let's say, my label is equals to a label, and now pack it by label.grid, and let's say column 0 and row 0. And you don't have to choose 0 necessarily, because whichever number you choose is the initial. So if I call this 1 1, it will have the first column and row as 1. So this right here file would have a position of 1 comma 1 if I had used 1 here. But since I'm using 0 here, which is kind of an easier way, right? Because we start counting from 0, it's much more easier to have it 0, but you can name it whatever you want. So this will be 0 comma 0 now, and this will be 0 comma 1, I believe, and this will be 1 comma 0 maybe. So you get the idea. It's actually inverted. So this will be row 1 column 0, and this will be column 1 row 0. Get it, right? So now if I save this, and this should not be label, this should be the name of that my label. There we go. And now if you run it, then you should see a Tinctor application, the Tinctor window pop up. I'm not really sure. I might have committed some mistakes because I'm not seeing it. Okay, there we go. There is definitely some mistake, I guess. Okay, there it is. Where is it? I can't see it. It's quite small, I guess. Okay, you can see how tiny that is. And let me bring it over here, and you can see that that's very tiny. You can see that I had to expand it. So this is basically how a basic Tinctor window looks like, and it's empty because I've not placed any text inside my label. So that I will be doing soon. So let's say that I say that text, so you have to type in text is equals to, it needs to be a string value. So let's say hello world, or maybe that's too cliche, so let's just stick with hello and run that again. And right now both the grid system and the pack system will both look alike, and you will see that the window that opens by default is a very tiny window, which means that it still only takes up as much space as is required. And you can see that it's hello over here. But if I had a pack system, then it would have gone right in the middle. So ideally we don't want our application to open in such a tiny window, right? We want it to be larger, and we can do that actually, and there's some code for that too. So we will do that later. I'll show you that in a minute. But let's start by slowly constructing our GUI application. Just a second. Alright, so the way that you would want this thing to work is by thinking, what do you need in this application? Well, you can just throw in your own ideas here, have your own unique stuff, but personally I would like to have a button, and when I press that button, it shows me the confirmed cases the recovered cases and the death cases. But also I want it to show not just as plain numbers, because if I just show these three numbers to someone, they would not know what they represent. So we would need to have some sort of text in front of it. So in front of this, it should be confirmed cases, recovered cases, and death cases. So you get the idea. And that's just one button. And so what I would want is, when I click a button, it creates a label which shows me the number of cases. As simple as that. And I would also need to, not need to, but I can just add it, because I don't know, why not, right? I can add a status button, which I had shown in my demo before, that when I click on that status button, it will show me this request status. Like I had said last time, that if the request dot status, where is it? Maybe I removed it. Okay, but I had demonstrated in the previous video that basically when this request interacts or communicates with this link, there is a status code to let us know if that request was successful or not. And the way that we do check that is, last time I had done this by doing print request dot status code, right? But that's not an efficient way, because if you're creating a GUI application, then we don't want anything to do with the terminal at all, right? So therefore we will get rid of this, and this time we will implement into a label. So only if I had something like an MS Paint to demonstrate you. I don't know if that's available on Linux. Let me check if there's something for drawing. Oh, I do have Gim. Okay, let me okay, now it should be much more easier. Sorry that I didn't think of this earlier, but now it should be much more easier to demonstrate. So this is just basically a Photoshop for Linux. So let me just create a new, whatever width and height. Okay, there we go. So I'll just use the paint brush to show it. Alright, so now imagine that, and forgive me for my terrible drawing, but I'm using a mouse, so I don't have much options here. So this is our main window, right? We have all our three buttons over here, right? So now ideally what I want is a button here, and that says get updates, so something like get updates U for short form, and another button that says check status. So check status, you get the idea, right? So when I click this, I want my data to be represented here or somewhere else on the screen. And when I say this, well, I want my status code to be printed here. And basically it can't just be the raw data itself. So if I were to directly print request.data, request.status code in here, it will just give me the status code number. That will be 200, right? But the average user won't have any idea what this is. Not just the average user, but anyone, even if he's a programmer, but he or she is a programmer, or them is a programmer, but if they haven't ever used request and they don't know what request.status code means, then they won't have any idea of what 200 or 400 would mean, right? So basically when we create GUI applications, we want it to create for the average user, right? We want to assume that the average user should be able to completely understand whatever's in here. And if there's something that they can't understand, then that shouldn't be here, because that's not efficient, right? So what I would want here ideally to display is that if it is 200, all right, let me draw it outside of the screen, because we don't want this to display on the screen. So if it's 200, then display me something like success in green. Okay, in green. Okay, let me just draw it in green. Let's put green, right? All right, so I want, okay, let's do that again. Green, any green, right? So success. And if I get the same as a 400, right, or 500, like I said, 400ish that kind of numbers, 400, 404, 400, and I don't know, any other number gives you a server side error, a client side error, and a 500ish number gives you, basically means it's a server side error. But that again does not mean anything to the user, right? In both cases, it just means that the request was not successful, and that's why it didn't work. So we will display here as error in red. So you get the idea, right? So this is how I want it to be, my ideal GUI application. So let's design it that way. So let's start off by having the button, right? And one more thing is, how would I create the button such that when I click it, it needs to execute this amount of code. One way to do this is that executable command, whatever I have, and I think this is the only way to do this, is to put that inside of a function. Create your own function, define your own function, and put that in there. So all I have to do is add the command to that button. So whenever the button is clicked, it will just call on that command, function, right? So let's do that, right? So let's start by, and I'll put all my buttons down here to not create, again, like I said, it's better to have the executable part before the definition part, so it does not create that error of it has been called before it has been defined, right? All right, so now let's start. So what I would want that button to do is, just a second. All right, so what I would want that button to do is take all this, what we had previously printed, into a more pretty format, and not print that, but show it in a label. So let's start by defining our button. I'll call it button 0, you can call it whatever you want, is equals to button, and inside here all we're going to do is add a command, actually a text, right? That button can't just be empty. The user needs to know what that button does. So I'll call it as get updates, and the command is basically that calls the function. So okay, let's see how would I do this. So basically when I click the button, I want a label to appear. That's all I want. So we will create a function which creates a label, and where that label gets the data, we'll take care of that later. But let's just call the function such as okay, well, we'll do that later, but let's put the button inside a grid, and let this be in column 0 and row 0. Oops, again I can't type. Alright, there we go. Now like I just can't type today, I don't know why, but alright. So now next we need a function, right? So let's call this function as display info, because it displays the information, right? So now what this does is, it has, let's say we have 3 things to display here, and I don't know if you can necessarily do that with just one label. That would be, I think it's doable. You need to add new lines, so I think I'll just do it with 3 labels, because why not? So we'll define 3 labels here. I'll call it label 0, label 1, and label 2. And when we do the grid thing, that's basically, if we don't do this grid part, then it won't be displayed. The button will be defined, but there's no part in our code to actually make it display, and that part is done by this grid. So we need to place this inside the function itself, because again, the way that it will just become more complex, that because these labels are defined only inside the function, it will just right off give us an error that there's no variable called as label 0, label 1 or label 2 if we put that outside of the function. Therefore we will have to put that inside of the function. So just copy that and paste it here. And now the grid, just a second, let me just complete this. And alright, so now we need to determine which row and column it will go. So where did it go? Alright, so this is in column 1. So these vertical rows, vertical lines are columns, and these horizontal are rows. And this, if it's on column 0 0, and this is on 1 0, and this is on 0 1, right? So I want my data to be printed here in this format. So my first label, that is the confirmed cases, should be on row 1, and the recovery cases should be on row 2, and the next on row 3. So hope that makes sense, but all are on column 0. So let's do that. Column 0, row 1, and just copy this and paste it. Alright, so now this is 3 2. Okay, so now the actual defining part of this. So now okay, so we'll start off by doing this. Alright, so now inside this we have the text, right? Text is equals to, we'll take care of that part later, but let's just start off by empty text. Alright, so now first I wanted to say that active cases is equals to this much, and this is, not the active cases but the confirmed cases. And this is the recovered cases. Alright, there we go. And finally the death cases. Alright, now this is a string, and in Python we can add 2 strings. And remember that we don't have to convert any of these things to strings. Why? Because we had already done that, right? Because in the last part we had got rid of all these square bracket junk things, and in order to do that we had to convert it to a string. So our final product, that is total cases here, is a string. So now all we have to do is just append it, or I think it's called concatenation, when you add 2 strings together in Python. So that would be just total cases, as simple as that, using the plus sign in the recovered cases, and using tab, using the tab key for shortcuts. Alright, so I think that's about it. So now in this we'll just have to put in the name of the function, and usually we have a function with opening and closing brackets, but inside a button we don't need that. We'll just have to name the function, and that's it. So now if everything goes right, it should successfully show the information that we want on pressing a button. Okay, so there's something, okay, I forgot to save it. Alright, let's do that again. And it takes a bit of time to grab the information from the website, but that's okay. And we'll just wait. And while we are waiting, okay, never mind. Okay, so let me just make this window bigger. So now when I press the button, there we go, it successfully shows us that. But like I said, we have a couple of problems here. One is that the window is not opened as a maximized window by default. We'll fix that. And we want the text to be bigger. This is way too small, and also the color of the text is kind of boring, so we want to make that interesting, right? And we'll do that. And we'll also add the check status button. So let's add first the check status button. So we'll start off by making a function, and we'll call this status. You can call it whatever you want to. And what this does is it okay, hold on a second. So let's assign the request.status, which is an integer, right, to a variable. So let's call this variable as the status 0, and this gets us request.status code, and it's an integer. So now I will make a little bit of a, what was that called again, flow control, right? Like that, I had said that we will need some code so that if the status is 200, it will display this text, maybe successful, and anything else, because only 200 means that it has been successful. Anything else won't work, so we don't have to worry about any complications. We can just use a simple if-else statements, right? So we'll start off by if status 0 is equals to 200, then I want you to print the second label, not the second label, but the third label, and we will also define it. Label and text is success, right? And let's not make it boring, so we'll make it green, and the way you do that is by FG, that is foreground color, right? And that's the color needs to be inside string. You can choose blue, cyan, red, pink, whatever you like. I'm just using green here. And again, label 3.grid, and this time, where it go, okay, this time remember that this was column 0 and this is column 1, sorry, oops, 1, and this is row 0. So this is the button, right? So our text needs to appear here, or maybe here, wherever you like. I want it to appear here, so it should be row 1, column 1. All right, so column 1, row 1. All right, so now after that I'll say that else, which means that whenever Python goes through this code, it first calls for the request.status code, and if it is 200, then it displays a success, and if it's anything else, it will display it as different. So we don't need to worry about overlapping here by calling the same the same label. We can just name it the same thing. It won't matter, because if this is executed, the code will never go to this else part, right? So we don't have to worry about that. And if this is false, then it won't go here, right? It will just skip it right here and go to else. So we can have two labels and call the grid function inside this without having any problems. So this would display us as error, and all we have to change is the foreground color. Let's change to red, right? So that's done. That was quite easy, and only part left is adding the button. So button 1.grid, it was column 1, row 0, and this is equals to a button. Text is check status, and the command is status, and that should work fine if everything goes right. So let's check. and all we're going to do is check the status button. We had already checked the get updates button, so we don't need to worry about anything else. I don't know why it's taking so much time. Alright, so we actually need to also get rid of the print functions that are here, because like I said, we don't need anything in the terminal. So let's click on check status. Alright, so it has a problem that request is not defined. So I don't know why, but with me this problem is occurring. The problem is that usually when you call a global variable that is here, like okay, oh, so it was request 1. Okay, but what I was about to say was that for me, since I don't know, since I have changed from Manjaro back to Ubuntu, I don't know what this problem is, but whenever I call a global variable inside a local variable, it just doesn't work. I have to use the global statement. I don't know what that is. Maybe it's a bug or something. No idea. But and there we go. It shows success, and we can check if it doesn't work. So, I think by switching off the internet, that should just work. But no need to do that. As long as it's working without any errors, that should be fine. And let's get rid of these print functions because we don't need them, because we're using labels now. And we're almost done with the GUI part. Just a bit more prettifying left, if you may. So we'll start off by changing the fonts to make it look much prettier. So we need to import fonts. The way we do that is import tincture.font as tk font. You can import this as whatever. This tk font doesn't need to be that way. You can import it as well. And I'll define it on the top part. So a general rule of thumb is defining should be as high or as top as possible, and the execution should be lower to prevent errors, obviously. And I'll call this a variable. You can call this whatever you want to. I'll call it fonts, and is equals to tk dot font. Was it? I forgot the syntax. Let me just check. Yeah, tk font. All right. Okay. All right. tk font dot font, and inside this, the family is equals to the string. And I'm using here Lucida Grand. You can use whatever you want to. Make sure that the font is inside your system. It exists, otherwise it probably won't work. So yeah, so once that is done, now for all the button and labels we can add the font, and the way we do that is by font is equals to fonts, and we just need to copy paste this line of code wherever we have buttons and labels. So we just have 2 buttons, so that should be easy, and we have a couple of labels, so that should be easy as well. And I think we're almost done, and there we go. That should give us new fonts now. So let's just check, run the code again, and after this, if this works well, then we will solve 2 more problems that we had. Is that you can see that the icon here is this default tk icon, and that's kind of boring. So if you want to change that, I'll let you know how to change that. So you can see that that's our new font now, and you can also define the text size, I guess. I forgot how to do that, so it should be, yeah, you can just set the size on this font variable here. Just go inside it and just type it as font is equals to what size? Let's say it's 30, and I don't know if it needs to be inside. Okay, it doesn't need to be a string value, it just works anyways. So let's do that once more, and finally we'll add an icon to that. Alright, so now that looks bigger, I guess, or maybe it's not working, not sure. Then it would have given us error, but I don't know. Okay, let me just check if I've made any mistakes. tk.font family grand. Let's just use font style maybe. I don't know, I think that I'm making some sort of mistake. And let's just, instead of here, font style with a capital S, font style. And let's just copy that and paste it wherever it is required. Okay, save it. And okay, where did it go? Let me just close this first and run that again. And by that time I will actually copy the icon that I need, which is already here. I forgot where it is. And I had downloaded this icon from flatpic.com, I guess. I forgot the name. Let me just go to, alright, there we go, that worked. You can see the font is bigger, so that's a success. And where was it? Okay, there it is. So paste your icon at the location of the Python folder, and I think my icon size is 128 by 128, so I don't know till what range it works. I think it works up to 256 by 256 pixels, but using 128 is a good way to prevent any errors. So once again, the font is, the font syntax is this: font style is equals to tk font.font, family is equals to Lucida Grand. You can use any font style you like, size is equals to 20, no quotation marks, and wherever we want the font, for example here label, you just need to add one more line as font is equals to font style, and make sure that this is exactly the same as the variable for the font. Alright, so now let's get on to adding an icon. And one thing to note here is that if you're on Windows, then, and let's say you have this application, right, then you can create an icon directly, but what the icon won't do is change the way this Python file looks. That will just look the same. But a simple solution for that on Windows is just simply create a shortcut and put that shortcut wherever you like, usually desktop, and there you can change the icon of that shortcut. But again, it won't change the icon in the taskbar. To change the icon in the taskbar, we will have to do it in the code itself. But for Linux users, the problem that arises is that if you are using an icon, then there's nothing called as a desktop shortcut, right? You need to create a desktop entry which basically executes this Python file, and that desktop entry can have an icon. But there's a bug, and I don't know why this is happening, is that the icon, if you're using an icon on this Python file, which means that it will look, the icon will be visible in the title bar, or what was this called, taskbar, but the desktop file won't work. So if you will click that, it won't open the application. But if you don't use an icon here, which means it won't look the way you want to on the taskbar, the desktop entry will work. I don't know why that is. It's some sort of bug maybe, but basically you can't use a desktop entry and icon at the same time. You'll have to choose one, and a solution for this is a bit complex. You can create the desktop entry for a bash file, and that bash file executes this, and then it's just a big pool of problems, right? One way to put that is there's just more and more problems, because I had tested this, and let's say you have a desktop entry right here. For example, let's assume that this is your desktop entry, right? That bash file needs to be existing in the same place that your desktop entry is, and that just defeats the whole purpose of the desktop entry, right? And maybe you can hide that bash file, but I don't know, I just don't think that's convenient. So if you use a bash script so the way it would work is when you click this desktop entry, it calls the bash file, which calls the Python file, and in that case the desktop entry works, and so does the icon. But like I said again, the bash cannot exist in this directory. It has to be in the desktop or wherever the exact place that this desktop entry exists. A weird bug, so I just decided to not use icons. I don't mind the default icon, so just in case if you want it, I will show you how to add that. So there we go. And once again, you can get free icons from the website called, where was it, flaticon.com, right? And it's made by FreePic. That's the website owners themselves, I guess. So yeah, credits to them for the icon. And you can even create your own icons in Photoshop or any image editor, and just make sure that you export it as PNG, and the dimension should be 128 by 128 pixels. That's it. Alright, so the way you do this is create a new variable called img and photo image, and a file is equals to toxic.png, because that's the name, and this should be the name of your image. Mine is toxic.png, as you can see. And go to next and root call inside single quotations wm and icon photo a comma root full stop underscore w comma image, and that should work now. Let's launch it again, and this time the icon should be visible on our taskbar. So wait for it to load. I don't know why it's taking so much time. As you can see, now the icon here is different, and if you have some other configuration, for example, if you have the icon to appear here, then it will be appearing there too. And you can see for me it also appears here, but it's too dark for you guys to see, but it also appears here. So wherever the window class has an icon, it will appear there, except for the Python file. That won't be changed. So I'm not going to be using this, so because I'll be also creating a desktop entry for you guys, for all the Linux users. So it's much easier and much convenient on Windows to have an icon there and on the taskbar here as well. So we've solved that problem. Now the final thing that we have left is adding the title. If you notice that the title of our Windows was TK, because that's the name that we have given here, so there's no default title that we have specifically specified. So the way you do that is very simple. For some reason I can't even talk today, except I can't even talk, I can't even type, I don't know why. So root.title, and inside string we'll call this the corona updates for US. There you go, simple as that. Now that is solved, one more problem is left, that we need the application to open as a default maximized application when we click it. So the way you can do this is by typing in w comma h is equals to root.winfo underscore screen width and root.winfo underscore screen height, and then in the next line root.geometry, and inside the brackets have a percentage, percentage d x percentage d and plus 0 plus 0, and this needs to be inside double quotation marks, and then space percentage space inside brackets w comma h. So that should work, and don't ask me how this works because I have no idea. I had seen this from Stack Overflow user. I'm so sorry, I don't remember your username, but thanks to the unknown Stack Overflow username and so many others, because of whom I was able to successfully make this program. And there we go, that works very nice, but the icon is not there because I had commented out that part, and but it opens as a default window now. And if you don't like the buttons being so close, you can add a padding. I think that's added by like this, adding a line called as paddy, but I don't remember the number, whether it needed to be inside string or not. You can just try it and let me know if it works. So yeah, that's about it for this GUI part. We have successfully created it. Now let's see how we can. So the Windows users, that's about it for you guys. You don't need to do anything else. In Windows, if you just directly click it, it should just properly run without any problems. You can create a shortcut, add an icon, whatever you want to. You have all that flexibility. I don't know about Mac. I've never used it, so I don't know how it works. But the way, if you want to use it without a terminal, would be to use it, just a second, to use it by right clicking for all the Linux users and making it executable. And you can also do it with the command line, such as sudo or just chmod plus x, name of the file, something.py, right? And that should just do it if you don't have this option available. But once that is done, then I should be directly able to, let me just get rid of this, and then I should be able to directly run this file, and it should work. Alright, and I will also try it with the airplane mode to see if our check status code works properly. How do I turn on airplane mode? I don't remember. Okay, anyways, so this is not working for some reason. Not sure why. Let me just check again. Permissions is executable. So clicking it, oh yeah, right, I totally forgot that. You need to add one more line to the top of it, and that was this. Okay, this basically, to run as a standalone program, it needs to know where the Python file is, and that's user bin/python, right? So now it should work. You can see how much complicated it is on Linux. Not sure why, and it is not working. I have no idea why. Let me just maybe check. Okay, let me just check the Python version that I have. Python 3 actually, and it's 3.8, and there we go, that works. I didn't run it from here, it worked on its own. It took a time, okay, there we go. It took a lot of time, but that's okay, it worked. And that's all that's important. And for all those who want to create a desktop entry, you just create a new file, and let's call this Corona updates us dot desktop. This dot desktop is important because it's a desktop entry. Let's open it. Okay, open it in the text editor. So go to the desktop dot desktop, where is it? Okay, there we go. Open that, and you need to type inside square brackets desktop space entry, and now exec, you need to specify the path, and I think that's home, the name of my username, space desktop slash, I think it was, forgot the name again, Corona updates us. And if you have if you have space in the name of your folder, then just put it inside quotation marks and it will work fine. /test.py, and icon is equals to the same directory. Let me just, okay, and then the name of the icon, toxic.png, and then you need to add a couple more things. Type is equals to application, and terminal is equals to false, and that's about it. You can save it, and you can see that automatically the icon has been updated now. And also make it executable by the same procedure, going into this and making it executable, and now it should just work. You can see that the icon appears under my cursor, and that's the way I've configured my desktop to work. Whenever I launch something, the icon appears under my cursor, and I don't know why this is not working. There's some issue. Okay, there it is. It just takes some time, but it works, and that's all that matters. So that's it for the tutorial. Hope you were able to learn something useful with this, and if you were, then make sure to like, comment and subscribe, and share this video if you enjoyed it. And if you don't want to go through all of this hassle, then just you can download the application from my GitHub repository, but unfortunately the GitHub repo project that I have is only for India, so it won't work for your country. It will give you the updates for my country, but soon I have created a new improvised version which should give you the updates for your own country, and I will be showing that in the next video soon, and it has a lot more new features as well. So okay, for some reason the get updates is not working, not sure why. That's weird. I'll have to check that. There's always some or the other error, but let's just get rid of this first, and let's run this again. Okay, so like I was saying, a new video will be coming, and I'll also be making a tutorial on how you can create a GUI for Proton VPN, and that would be specifically for Linux, because you don't have a GUI for Linux, so Linux users. So I'll show you how you can make one on your own. And let's try get updates. So name fonts is not defined. It's one or the other error all the time. So let's just go here and check where the problem is. Where is it? There it is. Found it. Font style, and one useful tip is, if you have a large amount of code, this only has about 80 lines. If you have a large amount, then you can use Control F and use the search feature. That's just a tip right there. So let's try that one more time. While that's about it for this video. Hope this tutorial was useful, and let me know your suggestions and opinions down in the comment section below. This is me, Frank Stan, and I'm signing out. And there we go, that works fine. So now I can sleep with peace, and I'll see you guys in the next video. So yeah, this is me, Frank Stan, signing out. Bye bye.